Welcome back to the Rock Hall Debate, where we debate the 2025 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees. Today's episode, The Black Crowes.
And as always, our disclaimer, real quick at the top. Just because we're arguing these points doesn't necessarily mean this is the side we are on or that we believe this band should or should not get into the hall. We're just kind of laying out the talking points and hopefully letting you decide and letting you add into the comments what your opinion is. So make sure to let us know below at the end of the debate what you think. And to start us off, I will begin today because I am pro Black Crowes getting into the Hall of Fame, and the pro side always goes first. As you can see, I have the green box around me, and Kev has the red box around him. So he will be taking the opposite side as me. So without further ado, let's talk Black Crowes getting into the Hall of Fame. Black Crowes have upheld the spirit of rock and roll with authenticity, influence, and staying power. Emerging in the late 80s and exploding into the early 90s with their debut album Shake Your Moneymaker, the Crowes brought a bluesy swagger and southern grit back to the mainstream during a time dominated by hair metal and pop. They kind of did bring back that Skinner, that Allman Brothers feel, that sound which had kind of been missing in rock and roll through the 80s and into the 90s. So it was kind of a refreshing time to hear them kind of come out, and Shake Your Moneymaker was a huge album. I actually went to see them open for what was it, Jimmy? What did I just tell you? Robert Plant at Red Rocks in the 90s for supporting that album. It was fantastic. The reverence for classic rock acts like the Stones, Faces, the Allman Brothers, as I mentioned, was never imitation. It was more like revitalization. Like, I feel like they took that. We had talked about that before with bands taking old music and influences and reinventing it or turning it into their own. I think they did a really good job with that. Shake Your Moneymaker, as I mentioned, had a couple, had the cover song on it and stuff, but they made that song even their own as well. So, Hard to Handle, that became a huge hit for them. There were things that they did that reinvented that sound in those songs, which I think carried them through to their next few albums, which, I mean, Southern Harmony and Musical Companion is one of my personal top 3 favorite albums of all time. It debuted #1, demonstrated artistic evolution and music maturity, and beyond the charts. They've been road warriors for decades, cultivating a loyal fan base and influencing even jam bands and other bands alike down the road. And more than anything, the Crowes have remained fiercely committed to their roots. They've never changed that sound. They've never changed who they are. Whereas trends in pop music and rock change rapidly or shift, they've preserved that raw, analog, groove-driven sound that's uniquely theirs. And regardless of the brothers and their love-hate relationship and how they get along and taking off hiatuses and doing the things that they do, they've still managed to last as long as they have and get back together. And even their new album is fantastic and touring for over a year now. They've collaborated with legends. That Jimmy Page album and tour they did at the Greek, fantastic. So, excuse me, to me, the rock isn't just about innovation. It's about contribution, integrity, and impact. And the Crowes check all those boxes. What do you think, Kev?
If this was the Academy Awards, they would have played you off. The Crowes are a great blues rock band, yes. When it comes to the Rock Hall, they fall a little short, in my opinion. If I want to hear Bad Company or Led Zeppelin recycled, I'm going to listen to The Firm. I'm not going to listen to the Black Crowes. And I take that they weren't innovators. They wore their influences on the sleeve. Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, the Faces. I get a lot of the Faces out of them. And the small Faces and Skinner. Great Southern rock sound. Did they push it forward? I don't think so. And next thing, I feel like they had those 2 great albums. They did. But after that, inconsistent. They were breaking up, reunited, breaking up. They were always arguing. It makes it tough to say that they had a lasting, widespread impact. They had tight little pockets of impact. After those first 2 albums, they spawned imitators. But once they were fighting and broke up again, everyone forgot about them. I mean, by the mid-90s, they were running around one further tour.
It's true.
So
And
And
I
I
think that's
feel like
interesting. Go ahead,
no,
finish it.
go, no, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, I think that's what's interesting was jumping on further tour. Like they always had this element. Like their live shows are fantastic, and they would get a little bit jammy, and they could have easily become that southern rock jam band sort of in the likes of like Widespread and the Allman Brothers and stuff like that. But they always stayed commercially viable by keeping that the crowd into, they don't get into those long extended jams. They jam
No,
enough with rock and roll, but not too far. So they kept it, in that pop
yeah,
sort of zone.
their radio play and their sales declined rapidly. They hit that high point, and and there was just no crossover appeal. There was no lasting presence for him. And it's like a great bar band. Like my favorite band is the Radiators. They are a fantastic bar band. The Black Crowes are a great bar band that now plays theaters.
They are, and it's funny because you mentioned some of the songs, and some of those songs are still like "She Talks to Angels," "Remedy," which is one of my favorite songs. "Hard to Handle," as I mentioned before. There's songs that still have stood the test of time with them, and yet you still recognize and you still hear a lot played, which is kind of cool. And I mentioned their collaborations, but they also toured with Bob Dylan and Neil Young, and they've influenced sort of that next generation, like Kings of Leon, Blackberry Smoke, Greta Van Fleet. Those are all direct influences of them. So they've kind of kept that feeling going, which is another cool thing about their influence. So I agree with what you're saying. Like they've kind of had those ups and downs, and the staying power wasn't from the 90s through right now because they definitely had hiatuses. But even during that time, Chris went on solo, his brother went on solo and started, Magpie and things like that. And
The
even those
Brotherhood,
bands, what's
the
that?
Brotherhood,
The
the Chris
Brotherhood, yeah,
Robinson Brotherhood.
Chris Robinson Brotherhood. And even those sounds, that let him get a little bit more jammy and sort of explore where he wanted to kind of go with things. And I'm just glad that they got back together. And just like the Oasis boys who really hated each other, these guys always had that conflict and that
It's the year of the brothers, huh?
it is the year of the brothers and the fighting brothers. It's kind of funny. Um, but yeah, and since their 2020 reunion and successful tours, it kind of proves that, they're still relevant. People are still going to see them, and there's still a bit of a fan demand out there for them, which is impressive after all these years to still
They do have a
go.
core fan base.
What's that?
They do have a core. They have a core fan base.
They
They
do. And
definitely have a
again,
core
that kind of reminds me of like Widespread. It's those Southern rockers that really get that core fan base together and like follows them forever, and like
fan.
is true to them. And I think that's cool. And, I've always liked their music. I've always been a fan of theirs. I think they deserve to get in just based on a few of those criterias and their staying power and what they've been. And,
Right.
yeah,
Great band. Great band. Absolutely. Hall of Fame level. Not quite. Like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Make sure that you check us out Wednesday nights at 9 Eastern. A couple weeks we have the fish after shows. If you're into fish, every night after every fish show, 15 minutes after the encore, we do a live recap. So check that out and join the Discord. We'll see you tomorrow for Joe Crocker.
let us know what you think. Do the Black Crowes deserve to get in the Hall of Fame? Yes or no below.